All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Geek Centurions. It's me, Boy Eli,
It's me, Joe.
and we're here to talk about a very interesting topic. So there was an interesting thing that happened a couple of weeks ago. Um, as you guys know, we're big fighting game fans. We watched Capcom Cup, and they recently announced for the next Capcom World Cup, uh, there's going to be the first place winner is going to win. How much money, Joey? Again?
Well, I believe the prize pool is going to be $2 million,
Mm-hmm.
which, if you don't know much about at least the fighting game community, a lot of their tournaments don't have a lot of big prize pools. So that's pretty big news, especially for the new Street Fighter Six. Uh, yeah, it sort of shows it's pretty much it's a lot of money, right, for
Yep.
competing in these sorts of things. And for fighting games, they haven't had a whole lot of big prize pools. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's pretty big news that one of the biggest fighting games uh, in the gaming space is getting like huge money, but it's not like video game like esports stuff getting huge prize pools in general. It has it's not like uncommon.
It's not,
Like
and we're going to be talking about that.
yeah, because it is quite interesting whenever we do see video gaming, because like video gaming as a whole has been always at least when it comes to competitive like esports stuff has always been kind of like in a weird spot.
Mm-hmm.
There's always been constant like of like talk from like uh major media outlets and stuff like that, sort of like comparing whether or not esports is a sport, like video it can't playing competitive video games.
How does a 13-year-old kid, able to like win $1 million just by playing video games? Does that mean I can do this too? That kind of like narrative that they tend to go with.
Yeah, and I think it's that sort of thing of like, oh, if it's a video game, anyone can play it, therefore it's not as
Mm-hmm.
um like prestigious as like professional sports.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's why a lot of people get sort of like a lot of the sort of mainstream news stuff sort of like kind of looks down upon it. But in my brain, I sort of think of it as like, well, anyone can really play like any sort of professional sport when you think about it. Like,
It's time and dedication.
yeah, like obviously like anyone can play soccer or baseball or football, but not everyone has the potential to be an all-time professional at it, Like I'm pretty sure there's people out there that like complain about like say, "Oh, you know what? These football players are complaining about the money they get. They play a children's sport." When you think about it, there might be some people out there just like, "Oh, hey, this guy he just kicks the ball all day, like every once a week or whatever, and he's complaining about not getting paid enough, kind of thing."
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think there is, but with video games, obviously, it's more of like,
And granted, just to set this as we continue, we're not saying one is better than the other.
no, I don't think anyone has said that
Yeah.
either. It's more of like what people say about esports, comparing it to professional sports, like baseball and football and all that stuff.
But most of this conversation is basically gonna also revolve around the idea of basically making money with video games, as a living, because it's a lot harder than a lot of people would think it is.
Yeah, like there are, and it depends on what game you're talking about too.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier, with fighting games, like the prize pools aren't that big. It really depends on the publisher and their commitment to putting into the competitive circuit
Yeah,
to get those payments.
and that's where another thing we're gonna talk about, because like there's a lot of things where, obviously Dota, League of Legends, I think there might be another game, Fortnite. A lot of people would ask about like how do those games get so much money. The reason is because developers put so much input into like making it so you're able to get money from it, and also the consumers themselves.
Yeah, because I know at least for League, they do sometimes do these things where in the run up to like the big like League of Legends like final or whatever, they do things where they can allow consumers to buy like a pack, which will contribute money to the prize pool, and they can get like certain things out of it too.
Mm.
And I know Street Fighter has kind of done this a little bit with whenever a Capcom Cup rolls around,
Mm-hmm.
where there is like a Capcom like cup like purchasable thing or something,
Yeah.
where you can like buy it. You know, if you buy this, you'll add a couple extra dollars or whatever to the prize pool. You know, so yeah, those are the ways of like developers sort of like.
So let's start there. The idea of developers, being able to put in the effort into supporting like pro players and people who do this for a living. Because for a lot of people, it's like, well, can't you do that with any game? That's sadly not true. As like so, for a lot of people, they're like, oh, if you play video games, I guess you can make money out of this and that. It's not every video game. It's not always a specific competitive game. The reason for that is because, like you were saying, developer support. So, and we're gonna use fighting games for an example because this is because that was
It feels like it's most prevalent in fighting games.
Yeah,
where you can see that disparity of like, depending on the developer, you can get X amount of money from all these tournaments and stuff, or heck, you have an official like world tour circuit basically where you have special like licensed events and like you can also like do like a small little grassroots tournament that can participate as well and that sort of thing. Like Capcom and like Bandai Namco have those sort of
for Street Fighter and Tekken both respectively.
Yeah, they have those sort of like avenues for that sort of stuff,
But some games don't have that. Case in point, so Capcom is like best known for some of their fighting games. One of the games that they've well known to make is their crossover fighting game like Marvel vs. Capcom. There hasn't been until recently, I would say, with Evo Evolution Championships, where they announced that yes, we're doing a Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 tournament, and the prize is $25K.
Yeah, $25K prize pool.
Yeah. And that is probably the only time you'll see a huge number for that. And that's not huge compared to what Capcom Cup has said, $1 million.
Yeah, but granted, part of that I believe is just like the age of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like that game came out back in like 2011, 2012, I think.
Yeah.
So obviously it's not like priority for Capcom to say make an Ultimate Marvel 3 circuit or whatever for it. And that's sort of like the thing with the developers. They usually just focus on like say like the current game, right? That they have. So that way, people buy that current game and stuff.
And sometimes the current game isn't the same as the old game.
Yeah, so that's sort of like I would say like marketing reasoning as to why.
And while whatever you may say about because after Ultimate Marvel 3 came Marvel's Capcom Infinite, and that one barely had a scene in terms of like competition of getting any prizes because there wasn't any much like support for it.
I know that they wanted to do something with it. I think they went through with it. It was like a battle. I think it was like battle for the stones or whatever.
Yeah,
which was like supposed to be like its own little competitive circuit for the Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. But it did have prize pool money. I don't remember exactly how much, but it wasn't. But like you said, like because of the game itself being a bit mixed in terms of reception, like there wasn't a whole lot of people playing it competitively, and which obviously led to eventually like Capcom not making any more putting any more time into that sort of game or its professional scene because it's like no one's playing this game, so
yeah. And there's also like the fact that with specifically in fighting games too, and we're gonna get to stuff like Fortnite and all that, is that for fighting games there's often a lot of love for the old school classics. They still run Street Fighter 2 Turbo tournaments. They still run Street Fighter 3 tournaments. Tekken 3, Ultimate Marvel is another one. and so on and so forth. Like there's Vampire Savior, which is a game that you've probably all never heard of, but it's technically called Darkstalkers. You ever seen Morgan? Yeah, no, they still have tournaments for that.
I mean, yeah, and again, it's just there's a lot of grassroots stuff for it.
Mm.
So, like that's all like community supported, right? Like the community sort of buys into it, and so a lot of those sort of tournaments have like, hey, pay $10 to get in, and then essentially those $10 with along with everybody gets pulled into the prize pot, and whoever wins gets like a portion of that money, and so it goes down further down the list, second, third place, that stuff, and like again, it's like developers aren't going to be doing much for it because they don't have an incentive because it's a game they don't make copies of anymore, and they don't get money from it if you buy it like from the secondhand market. So it's just like, I don't know, like I kind of feel like Capcom doesn't do,
and this isn't just a Capcom. This is just like any
it's just any game, like when you're making competitive like if you're doing like a Halo 2, like an OG Halo 2, you get your old Xboxes out, LAN tournament kind of thing. I don't think Microsoft's gonna come in and be like, hey, yeah, here's like $250,000 for our prize pool. They're probably just like, well, I mean, if you were playing this on the Master Chief Collection, maybe I would give you money, but you're not. So I mean, it's just kind of one of those things.
We want to focus on the new one because we can promote the fuck out of that, and we can sell a lot more stuff through that.
Yeah, which it's not like, I don't think
it's totally understandable from a marketing aspect, right?
Yeah, it's
from a business aspect. It makes sense. Like there's you can't do anything. You can't update the old games because that's a lot of work, and you don't want to put too much money into that. And it's a different hardware kind of stuff. Like the things that people do to support current like competitive games aren't the same as you would do for like an old school game. So those 10 games tend to be like more grassroots, low, and very like community built. Look at the Smash Melee.
I mean, yeah, I know, and that's what I was gonna get to. Like Smash is in that sort of weird spot. Like Ultimate is obviously still popular, and heck, Nintendo I think wanted to do like, it's always been kind of weird with Smash and in terms of like as an esport. Obviously with Melee they've had this weird sort of like relation,
back and forth.
Back and forth of like not wanting people to like stream it and like do stuff to where like the community essentially kind of fought back, and like when Nintendo's like lifted some of those restrictions, and now we're in sort of a situation where they were because Nintendo wasn't doing like essentially enough. The Smash community went out and made their own Smash World Tour sort of circuit for Melee and Ultimate, and then Smash decided to join up with Panda Global to make the Panda Cup, which would be pretty much a Nintendo backed competitive circuit for the Smash community, and due to some shenanigans that's sort of been put on the back burner. But yeah, it's just kind of a it's a weird relationship, and it's it's a clear sign of like, developers, it's mainly they are the primary chiefs of like, hey, this game is viable as a competitive scene, you can make money out of it, instead of just like having it be sort of a grassroots community thing. Because when it comes to Melee and stuff, it's all like backed by the community and stuff, like hell, I'm pretty sure like a good chunk of the top players are like don't make a whole lot of money from playing Smash, and that's sort of the sad thing about it. Like, just to like jump a little bit ahead, like there was that Fortnite Cup back in like 2019, I think. Where some kid won like $3 million or something, and that's like more than like 10 times the amount of money, or like I think there's like a crazy statistic where like that's more money than any competitive like Smash player who consistently makes like top 1 or 2 appearances makes in their entire career.
Yeah, because it's a game again that's old that a company doesn't want to back anymore because there's no way to promote it further.
Or, in the case of Nintendo, they just don't care about the competitive scene in general and just find it a little weird.
Yeah.
So yeah, like to the idea of like, oh, to people who think that it's easy, it's not. It really easy.
No,
it depends on the game.
It depends on the game, and it also depends on the developer themselves. So obviously, you mentioned Fortnite. Fortnite's made by Epic, which not only makes money through Fortnite, but through Epic Games.
I mean, yeah, they're a game store, and their use of the Unreal Engine that they license out to other companies. So they make a bunch of money. I mean, heck, obviously, like Fortnite itself has made a bunch of money, which is why they're willing to like have these insane pots. But at the same time, if you think, oh, I can just play Fortnite, a battle royale, where it's random and stuff, and I think I can win a couple of championships, like,
It ain't
that easy, because you're gonna be playing with a bunch of kids and stuff who know how to friggin' build giant, giant like structures the size of the Empire State Building, and just going like, what the hell?
Yeah.
So, and that's the other thing when it comes to sort of like, that whole idea of like esports being like super easy to get into, where the consensus is that, oh, it's just me pushing a bunch of buttons, it's not that physically taxing on you and stuff, which is like, I mean, there's a lot of mental things going on with it, and obviously I think there's still physical stuff going on with it too, because you need to have like good rest and stuff like that to like be able to play at a high level.
There's a health side to it, not just sitting down and just looking at a screen all day.
Yeah, like there's a lot I think competitive players have to do in order to stay healthy and make sure they're playing at the highest level, and I think that's sort of like half the other half of the reason why people, like, at least mainstream, like, sort of people sort of look down on like esports. It's like, oh, that's just something
anyone can do.
Yeah, anyone can do. Like, it's super easy, right, to play a video game, when clearly it's not. It's not just pressing buttons and stuff. Like, I mean, if you took the time to, like, League of Legends, yeah, you could boil it down to just clicking on your mouse and like pressing a couple of buttons on your laptop or computer or whatever. But the mechanics and all the intricacies that go into the meta and stuff are just so complex that I think an average person trying to get onto League are just gonna be so confused. Yeah,
no, there's a lot of intricacies, and even then, like, the game that you could get into might be more difficult to find such support to, because like I don't tend to I don't know, I'm not, I don't play Fortnite, I don't look for Fortnite games or anything of the like, but rarely do I ever see any like grassroots events.
Yeah, I think that's partially because I think Epic's willing to make these large scale events and stuff, so yeah, no, but I think the thing with the Fortnite tournaments, yeah, it is just, it's a lot easier when the developer is willing to put out a lot of money and like official support for these tournaments than it is to just make a grassroots tournament kind of thing, Like, there's no need for it, right?
Yeah.
Like with a lot of the games you mentioned earlier, with the Street Fighter 3, like Smash Melee and stuff like that. Like, the need for like that community backed tournament is there because no one else, like the developers aren't willing to put the time and effort, or more or less the money into building it up and sustaining like a circuit like that. And yeah, again, like we said, it's not like it's understandable why that's the case a lot of the time, especially with those old games, but it is sort of like, it's a nuanced take of like, hey, you know, you can get into video games professionally and play these games at a professional level. However, don't assume you're going to be making a ton of money off of it day one, you know?
No.
Like, depending on the game, like, yeah, you could be like that kid that won that Fortnite tournament and win a bunch of money. But that's Fortnite, right? If you're thinking about, like, doing that for some other games, you gotta, like, know essentially you gotta, like, see what the scene is like, you know? And realize that, yeah, all right, can I make a living off of this? Maybe, but to bring it back to fighting games, I feel like a good chunk of competitive fighting game players, yeah, they go to tournaments and make money there, but at the same time, they do other things like streaming, for instance, as a way to like ensure that they can still do what they do. You know,
even have a real job sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I know in terms of the Melee community, I knew that Hungrybox for a little bit was an actual engineer. Like he went through college, studied to be like an engineer, and was doing that engineering stuff all while playing competitive Smash. It wasn't until I think he joined up with Team Liquid and then got more into the streaming stuff where he could be like, all right, let me focus full time on competitive Smash. I think I have enough to where I can kind of sustain myself without doing the engineering stuff, you know? And that's the thing, you know, at least in terms of that sort of community. Like, I feel like it is sort of just, like, you have to, like, sort of, like, plan it out. You know, like, cause I feel like a lot, especially because of, you know, the whole situation back in 2020 when, like, a lot of tournaments had to shut down, not just fighting games, just in general.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of competitive players, I think, had to transition into doing live streaming stuff because, realistically, that was sort of the only way for a lot of their skills. One, they could still hone their skills, right? Through, like, online play and stuff, hopefully. And two, it's a, you know, obviously a decent way of making money as well, you know?
Yeah. No, you're right. And it's one of those things where, like, competitive, you know, gaming is a thing, and you can make money off of it, but just because, you know, you can make a load of money out of it doesn't mean it's a secure way to, you know, to live.
It's like, I think it's also kind of, it would be comparable to say, to like being a YouTuber, right?
Yeah.
In that sort of way, like,
anyone can be a YouTuber.
Yeah, in theory, anyone can make videos on YouTube and stuff and hope to become a big person that can make a living off of it. But considering where YouTube is now, you know, like back in 2007, 2008, I think it was a hell of a lot easier because, you know, YouTube was still new. No one knew what the hell they were doing. And most of the time they were just posting a bunch of dumb videos that would get viral and stuff. Now you have to, if you're going to be a YouTuber, you need to be more proactive and like
be good at social media and like, you know, consistent scheduling.
Yeah, to like gain that sort of buildup of support. And obviously the YouTube algorithm is a thing. It's a fickle goddess.
Yeah, that
it
is.
You know, that will pick and choose whatever decides to be popular for a day. And, you know, hoping and praying that one day that maybe it's you and maybe you can get a decent chunk of people, and then hopefully building a base off of that as well, because that's also the other thing with YouTubing, right? It's like once you get like a dedicated audience, you know, like it's hard to maintain that, and maybe sometimes it's like maybe your content's getting old. Do you want to change it up? Maybe that drives away your old fans, but maybe you can get new fans. Point is, a lot of complicated stuff when it comes to YouTubing, and to just generalize it all down to being like, oh, YouTubing's easy kind of thing. It's easy to make money off of YouTube, where it's like, not necessarily, you know? Which is why I think back in like 2012, when it started to become apparent, like, oh, you can make a living off of YouTube now, like a good chunk of the people that were making a lot of money were Let's Players, right? Let's Players?
Yeah.
Because I think that's where this whole sort of thing of like making video games, playing video games and making a living off of it came from as well. It wasn't just like esports like on the rise and like, oh, you can play video games competitively. It's also just, hey, there's people that are just straight up playing games that people are watching for entertainment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think in that sort of perspective, that's why we got a lot of those sort of like channels where Let's Players, stuff. Heck, I think there was even people who were like making a side gaming channel just to cash in, Like, I'm pretty sure, what's that guy's name? The Game Theory guy.
Yeah.
Also had like maybe a little bit where he would do little Let's Plays every now and again.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's just a thing that was happening back in those days, where like any sort of big successful YouTuber would also maybe try to see if they can get into gaming, because hey, people are watching these Let's Players. Let's try to do like a side gaming channel.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it would work, sometimes did not. So yeah, like it is sort of apparent of, yes, you could make a living, but it's not as easy as everybody says.
Mm-hmm.
You got to put in time and effort, which, much like an actual sport, when it comes to esports, yeah, you could make a living off of playing soccer or football, but you better be like really, really good at it and hone your skills enough to the point where you can be, say, selected to get maybe a scholarship to go to a university to play out in college,
or be scouted by
various people to get played into like the minor league system and eventually go to the pro leagues, that sort of thing.
To give it to like a real world example, what was, I forget he's one of our players for the Astros. He got scouted. He was like at the age of 40 or 30, was it?
Are you
Gurriel?
Oh, you're talking about, okay. Yeah.
Why did I forget his name?
Well, to be fair, like I think part of his story was that he was from Cuba.
Yeah.
And he sort of had to get to the United States by the time he was like 30 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, he was playing competitively baseball in Cuba, but he didn't make it to the major leagues until he was like, in his 30s, and that's just how it is in Cuba. But I get what you mean.
Mm-hmm.
Like there is a lot of honing your craft when it comes to that stuff. Like there's definitely like, at least in terms of baseball, because there is like a minor league system and then you have to get promoted to the major leagues.
Mm-hmm.
There are some players that just take years being in the minors before they get to the major leagues. Mm-hmm. So again, it's like you got to hone that craft and stuff. Because I mean, they're still getting paid, but like not as much as say like a major league player would.
Mm-hmm. That's where sponsorships come in, and like that's another thing. Sometimes these games are sponsored, and they have a lot of support. Like I think Evo this year is being sponsored by Chipotle.
But which is like the first time I think they've actually been like had that like sponsored by thing. Because for the most part, I feel like Evo's always been like, oh, it's just Evo,
Mm-hmm.
But considering the size of the Evo, it gets bigger every year. It does make sense for that to happen. Like, I mean, to be fair, it happens with everything, really.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think the only like when it comes to like major sports, I don't think the Super Bowl is the Super Bowl like sponsored by
either Pepsi or Apple.
Yeah, like,
that's why the halftime show is like Pepsi presenting, because like it's
yeah. But yeah, no, I mean that as well as where they get money too, because sponsors will dump money in because it's like, hey, show our stuff and we'll give you some money to run this event, kind of thing, But yeah, no, and heck, I mean, like I said as well, at least when it comes with competitive gaming, there is like teams and stuff like Team Liquid, Panda Global, Echo Fox when it was still around,
Renegade.
I think T1 is also a competitive.
Moist.
Yeah, the Moist Esports team. Yeah, like all that stuff. It's just people being able to join those sort of esports teams. That also gives them a bit of a steady income as well.
Yeah,
because they're being paid by a team to play games. You know.
Now, of course, we're going off to how making games, how to make money through gaming, but obviously going back to the whole idea of esports, it's totally dependent on the developers and like the community itself. Like sometimes the community will move forward, but there's still a community that supports the old one. Like yeah, because Overwatch 2, I haven't seen much of it, but I feel like it's still being competitive. I mean, we have our our outlaws over here, and there's always an event, something going around about that with those guys. So like the community, there's always like a community support, whether it be big or small, when it comes to these esports. But the esports ones usually tend to have the bigger community. I mean, heck, look at League of Legends, how often they sell out crowds.
Yeah, they have full stadiums and stuff. Same thing with Dota. I think that's sort of like the crazy thing when it comes to like those types of like, esports. Heck, StarCraft 2 back in the day, like in South Korea, they would actually play that shit on TV, like competitive StarCraft 2, which is kind of insane to me that StarCraft 2 was like, because this is a strategy game,
Yeah.
and that shit was like so competitive. And nowadays, when you don't hear like StarCraft 2 in the conversation anymore when it comes to esports. It's Fortnite, League, Dota, competitive shooters like Overwatch or Counter-Strike, Valorant. Like those types of games are getting like the sort of the big bucks now in terms of like this getting like the spotlight in terms of the esports, not Dota. I mean, I'm sorry, not StarCraft, which. I don't know. I guess like when in my just to get a little off topic, I feel like when it comes to like the strategy games being competitive, it's kind of like a higher version of chess, if you will.
It basically is.
Which is the other thing where when I think about it, it's like, okay, so people don't have issues with like chess being like seen as a sport, right? But yet like gaming is where you draw the line. But like there's no. Like, you could make the same argument with chess as you make with gaming, where it's like, oh, it's not that physically demanding. It's like, oh, but it's the mental aspect of chess, like, or whatever. I don't know. I mean, not to badmouth chess players,
No, of course not.
I mean, chess players are pretty freaking cool.
Yeah. But yeah, no. I guess to the point of our of this podcast is that while yes, esports will. Help make a living. It kind of depends on the community and the support and like the game you play.
Yeah, and more of like it's kind of like crazy to see how much money is into gaming, but like these like esports stuff. But yeah, you are right that like you need to like really sort of like thread the needle in terms of like trying to make it a viable option to make a living off of.
Just like any job.
Yeah, because like, like obviously, I think that's sort of the thing with entertainment and like sports and stuff, is sort of that like, yeah, you could like try and become like the best football player ever and stuff, but you also got to prepare for the chance that you might one day have like a life-altering injury where you can't play anymore. So what do you do now? Like, what's your backup plan? Did you make enough money to like potentially maybe just retire and like live off of your retirement funds, or like, or what? That's sort of the thing. Which is why I think like with gaming, at least when it comes to esports, a lot of these players are looking at streaming as like a fallback. Because it's like, yeah, you have to be a personality and people know who you are because, oh, you're good at that one game and you place in high in a lot of those tournaments. So people obviously are going to watch you because you're good and competitive. And hopefully you have enough of a personality to where people will just watch you because of you, So yeah, that is, that's sort of the take I think we've had. Like, yeah, esports, they're fun, they're cool, there's a lot of money into it, but you gotta really like, you gotta thread that needle, right? You can't just spend all this money believing that you can be the next esport like champion, like the next best player in Call of Duty, Fortnite, or whatever. But when it doesn't happen, you've wasted a bunch of money and buying all this stuff, and you're just like, well, shit, I'm not that good, but I don't want to put in the effort. I thought I was good already, you know. So why did I spend all this money for?
And that's why the best way to go about it is to make it a hobby.
Yeah, I guess, you know, like as a side thing, and then once you start to see sort of the fruits of your labor develop, then it's like, okay, maybe I should take the next step, you know?
Exactly. And I guess that's a good place to like end the episode, right? Like it's viable, it's possible, but it's a lot of time and dedication. Making it a hobby is probably the best way to go about it. But it doesn't secure anything as to see like what we mentioned earlier with like something like Capcom Cup. The fact that, by the way, this is Capcom Cup 9. It took 9 of these to at least get a $1 million worth of money, and that's for the next one.
Yeah, and even then, like when you think about it, it's like that means it's taken like 2 iterations of Street Fighter, because they started Capcom Cup back with Street Fighter 4 at this point. You know, it's taken them like 2 like generations essentially of Street Fighter games to get to a point where Capcom is like, yeah, let's throw in $1 billion as the prize pool or whatever. Yeah, that sounds pretty cool.
With it, and like it's a game that's like not as big as say, well, it's has an influence, yes, but it's not as big as like League or Fortnite.
It's the top tier of fighting games essentially. It's like if Dota or League took like the same amount of time as Street Fighter to get to like $1 million prize pool. That's how weird that is, you know. But yeah, you know, it's just all kinds of craziness without, you know.
Yeah, but anyways, guys, if you take anything from this, just play games and have fun. If you feel like you can do it competitively, go for it. But anyways, if you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to follow us on social media: Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at the Geek Centurions, where we're most active on Instagram. Where you'll find a link to all podcasts since we're officially part of like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, and all that like, and a link to the YouTube for all you audio listeners out there. And if you want to support us there, go ahead. We also have Patreon for informal support. And yeah, guys, it's the end of the episode. It's been me, your boy Eli.
It's been me, Joe.
Guys, have a good one. Peace.